Hi, everybody in podcast land and also on YouTube. I'm James.
I'm David.
I'm Riley.
And this is the Carpool Critics Movie Podcast, where today we are discussing Edgar Wright's best movie ever, according to David and others. Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Scott Pilgrim.
And is that your spoiler alert?
That's the spoiler alert. If you knew that, yeah, that's what that means. If you haven't seen this movie, spoiler alert. It's been out for when did it come out?
11 years, yeah.
You've had time.
This is my choice of movie of the decade, last decade.
Jeez Louise.
Top 3.
Crazy boy. Next week, if you're part of our convoy of listeners who watch the movies ahead of time so that you can listen while we're talking in real time. Whoa. Next week we are doing, hold on, I have to look up the name again. The Mitchells versus the Machines.
Ooh.
An animated movie from the creators of Enter the Spider-Verse.
Yeah. The Lord and Miller?
Yeah.
Nice.
The Lord Chris Miller.
The Lord Chris Miller.
The Lord and Savior.
He got his title.
It's going to be amazing. So
Apparently it's good.
I'm excited.
I know nothing about the plot.
I haven't seen the
There's
trailer.
machines and
Apparently
Mitchells.
there's a family, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But today it's Scott Pilgrim
Yeah.
all day, baby. So let's get into it. David, what are you giving this movie out of 10?
More animated than a cartoon, more arcadey than a game. If you don't like Scott Pilgrim, I'm going to teach you about pain.
Wait. Was that?
That
sort of rhymes.
Yeah,
I don't know if you
okay.
can rhyme.
I give it 6.9 evil X's out of 7.5, which is about a 9.2 out of 10.
Ooh, man.
We got a fan here.
I
My
knew-
brain,
I
it's
knew-
too late in the day to do this kind of math.
I know I'm going to be fighting an uphill battle, but I'm right. And I start at the top.
You're giving it a 9.2?
9.2 to 10. Let's go.
Well, you know,
Where does
Let's
this
go.
rank in your list of all-time favorite movies?
So if you asked me to rank it before I did this rewatch, I probably would have put it in like the top 5. It's still in my top 10. And like that scores are weird because like I recognize there's severe problems with this movie. And I think my feeling about it is higher than the score I'm giving it.
I think it's really interesting that this rewatch kind of downgraded the movie for you. I wonder if that aligns with some of my personal theories about this movie. But before we talk about those, Riley, what did you give this movie out of 10?
Sure, the characters leave a little to be desired, but this is a romantic comedy plus insane superhero action sequences. It's literally the best of both worlds, and it's the movie Edgar Wright was born to make. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10.
Nice.
Because it's just so good. I
Yeah.
think that like I had fun watching it. I can recognize the intense artistry in literally every frame. And yeah, like I said, the story is a kind of like, it's sort of lackluster, but it's like very anime inspired, very video game inspired. It's super fun. And that's what it really comes down to.
Okay, we're doing paragraph answers now, I guess. Okay.
Sorry.
So this is by far your favorite Edgar Wright movie.
I would say, yeah.
I don't think you scored anything else higher than
100%. No, 100%. I mean, I think we watched the other Edgar Wright movies, and I knew that he had done this one, and I had seen Scott Pilgrim before. I forget. I think this is my third watch, maybe. And I was like, having watched this and then his older stuff, I was like annoyed by it because I'm like, it should really be this. Like, this is Edgar Wright to me, 100%. This is what he's born to do. And so, yeah, it's a good time. James?
It's Kill Bill meets Napoleon Dynamite with Edgar Wright's signature editing. 6 out of 10.
Napoleon Dynamite.
Well, just because it's like a teen,
Sort of.
movie. And when I say 6 out of 10, this is like, again, here's a bunch of caveats.
Wait, you gave it a 6?
I'm giving it a 6. That's just my personal.
Holy shnikes.
And that's my subjective experience of watching it. This is like I can recognize this is a 10 for some people. This is a very well-made movie.
Mhm.
It's just, I didn't care, and I didn't really want to watch it because I'm not a teenager. But I did watch this movie as a teenager, and I remember not a young person, a 20-something, I watched it, and I remember thinking it was pretty good. I liked it quite a bit back then. And I wonder if this is what I was getting at with your rewatch thing is like, you rewatch it now that you're 30, and you're like, oh, this really isn't made for me. I appreciate what they're doing, but like, bleh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do see it. And I think like you guys kind of touched on it a little bit where this movie is it's high concept as fuck, but it doesn't have as much substance as it could have. But I think that it makes more than makes up for it in so many other ways. And there is nothing like this that exists.
I mean,
there's no movie that has this crazy energy,
absolutely.
this crazy style, and like it all comes together to be something absolutely special.
Yeah, let's talk about all those special things right after this message from our sponsor,
Okay.
Manscaped, and their Performance Package Kit. It comes with a ton of stuff, including their new lawnmower, waterproof trimmer with advanced skin-safe technology, which helps reduce nicks and cuts, their crop preserver, ball deodorant, which your partner will appreciate, their weed whacker nose and ear hair trimmer. That looks, that kind of hair looks good on no one. And also, their new Shears 2.0 luxury nail kit. Head to manscaped.com/carpool20 today and get, you guessed it, 20% off. Plus free international shipping.
Ooh.
That works for me. Plus you'll get their Shed travel bag, also functional for me, and a pair of their anti-chafing boxer briefs. And guess what, everyone? I have 2 legs, so I can wear those too.
Oh,
Wow.
that's good.
You know what's weird? I always say these things that end up coming off as ableist. That's so messed
Yeah.
up. We're also brought to you by Private Internet Access VPN. PIA helps you hide your true IP address so that you can bypass geo restrictions and censorship. You can connect up to 10 devices at once and includes an internet kill switch.
I didn't think of anything.
What? If your VPN gets disconnected involuntarily. PIA is available for Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, and even has a Chrome extension, so check it out at lmg.gg/carpoolcritics.
You cucky cuck.
Okay, what I was getting at.
Wait, does he say
Yeah,
that?
he says that.
He says you cucky.
You cocky cock.
Oh.
And that's why they couldn't say fuck in the movie, because
was
that's
like-
their one swear word.
Oh.
Because I was like, they didn't have the term cuck at
No,
that point.
no. Cocky cock.
They didn't have it.
Well, they-
hundreds-year-old word.
They did, but it's like, it wasn't like
yeah.
Popular.
in popular usage.
I'm really sad we didn't get to watch the remaster of this movie, because everywhere that has theaters right now is getting a 4K remaster with Atmos and Dolby Vision. So it looks a lot better. And I think that this movie not looking as great as it could was a bit of a downer for me.
It would have been dazzling.
Yeah.
I'm sure. It looks great in 1080p.
Totally. It looks
But
good.
the thing is, every time, HDR is one of those things where you're like, yeah, it's an okay feature. Would you buy a TV just for that? I don't know. But then if you start watching HDR and then you flick it on to just HD, it's like, wah,
Yeah,
wah.
totally.
Brutal looking.
And this movie would be spectacular, like you said, spectacular with those extra highlight pops.
Specular highlights. Yeah, that'd be great.
It'd be so
Man,
good.
we get to talk about this again. Since I upgraded from my laptop, I'm watching on a TV with HDR, but like I completely disagree. I don't know.
It looks good.
fine. Yeah,
No, it totally looks
it
good.
looks great.
1080p.
Why don't you give us the synopsis of this movie?
Oh, okay, I can do that.
Thank you.
In Toronto, 22-year-old Scott Pilgrim is dating 17-year-old Knives Chow to the disapproval of his roommate, his sister Stacy, and the other members of his band, Sex Bob-omb. But then Scott meets American Amazon delivery girl Ramona Flowers after seeing her in a dream and asks her out without breaking up with Knives. When Sex Bob-omb enters a battle of the bands, Scott is attacked by Ramona's ex-boyfriend, and after defeating him, learns that in order to date Ramona, he must defeat her remaining 6 evil exes. Scott finally breaks up with Knives, who blames Ramona and swears to win him back. Meanwhile, Scott defeats Ramona's next 3 exes, skateboarding actor Lucas, super-powered vegan Todd, and punk ninja Roxy, while also confronting his own ex, pop star Envy Adams. Scott defeats Ramona's 5th and 6th evil exes, the Katianagi twins, during the next Battle of the Band show, earning him an extra life. But then, Ramona appears to get back with her final evil ex, record executive Gideon Graves. Sex Bob-omb accepts Gideon's record deal, but Scott quits the band in protest. At Gideon's venue, the Chaos Theater, Scott challenges Gideon to fight for Ramona, earning the Power of Love sword. But Knives interrupts the battle by attacking Ramona, forcing Scott to reveal that he cheated on both of them. Gideon kills Scott, and Ramona visits him in limbo to reveal Gideon implanted her with a mind control chip. Blech. After wondering who he's really been fighting for, Scott uses his extra life, returns to the Chaos Theater, and challenges Gideon again, this time for himself, gaining the Power of Self-Respect sword.
Nice.
Scott apologizes to his band, Ramona, and Knives for being an ass, accepts his own faults, and joins forces with Knives to defeat Gideon. With Knives' encouragement, Scott leaves with Ramona to try again. Pretty good. I mean, like, when I say it like that, I mean, the first time I watched through, I'm kind of like, this is, like, not very satisfying. The arc, I'm like, what did these people really learn? It felt like it was really shoehorned in, but now that I'm kind of reading it, I'm like, yeah, okay, there's a structure there. There's
sure.
a journey.
I feel like this movie gets better and better too.
Yeah.
For sure.
In the first like 20 minutes, I was like, nah. But by the end, it's like, yeah, everything's coming together. He had that extra life before.
Yeah.
Now he's got the self-respect. It's
I
good.
remember specifically when the first fights kicks off, being like, "Oh, it's this kind of movie." Like having
know.
no idea that it was going to go into that territory.
so
When
funny.
you first watched it, you had
Yeah,
no
I had no idea it was going to be a crazy fight thing. I was just like, had no idea what the movie was,
And then
Oh.
the first
fucking
X,
flies in.
the first X that he fights is the most like eccentric one.
Yeah.
In a way, like the way he flips his hair around and just the way he is.
Grim.
I am Matthew Patel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if he had fought the is it Chris Evans? Is that
Yeah.
actor's name? If he fought
that's-
Chris Evans first, it'd been like, oh, okay, I kind of get this.
Yeah.
But with that Matthew Patel, my wife was like, "Oh, this is for kids, right? This is a kids movie." I was like,
I guess
Yes.
so.
It's sort of. I mean, there
Yeah.
isn't really anything that's like too inappropriate.
"It's a teen movie.
It's a
Yeah,
teen.
It's a teen. It's like
Yeah,
a John Hughes movie."
Yeah. I think that something I really like about this movie and is the strength of the comic book that it's based off, or the graphic novel it's based off of, is the variety of the exes. I think that's really fun getting to meet them and like the build up to the fights, and the fights themselves are really clever. And like some of them are really good action, but most of them it's about Scott overcoming with his brain.
Right.
And I really enjoy every single fight.
So yeah,
Minus like one.
The twins one's kind of a cop out.
Yeah, I agree. And so it's a lot bigger in the comic book. And it's supposed to be bigger, but then when they cast them, they couldn't speak English, so they had to cut that subplot.
Oh, really?
Because it's supposed to be a whole bigger thing where they're avoiding the fight, and they kidnap Kim, and it forces the fight on Scott and stuff. So it's like a whole other thing. But because they're taking 6 graphic novels that are like thick graphic novels, combining into one movie,
right?
They had to kind of cut corners somewhere, and that fight just ends up being like, it's okay.
And the original series takes place over the course of a year, right?
Yes.
And this one is like a week?
Couple weeks, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a ton of plot points in the books that they don't include here, but I mean, they find a way to like squish in all the really cool ones.
Yeah. So, didn't they start making this movie when only 5 had been released?
Two had so the 2 had been drawn.
I had read 1.
And then they started making the movie. Well, they started making it before, and then so this came out before the series was done.
But I think when they launched the movie, the final book was just launched,
that's
or
possible.
something
That's
like
possible.
that.
Yeah.
But the comic book ended up taking inspiration from the movie, which is kind of interesting. And Bryan Lee O'Malley was very involved in the movie. And you can see it. Like
I think he co-wrote, like he wrote
he worked with the script. They had Edgar Wright brought in a script writer to make it work.
Michael Bacall.
Yeah, you can see that this is such a product of love on every level. There's no person in this movie that wasn't pouring their everything into it. And I think that, like you said, it's not for everyone. Like some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it, but no one can deny that people like half-assed this movie.
No, it's not half-assed. They don't like wade into this territory. They dive into it. When at the beginning, when you get those little like, there's a lot of text on screen effects in this, like a score gets incremented or something. And they do it the first time, you're like, oh, it's going to be one of those movies where they do that 3 or 4 times. It was like, no.
No, it's literally. Yeah.
There's a lot of that.
I love it. It's kind of, I mean, it's an homage to the comic book, and then it's also an homage. Like the comic book has these sort of video game aspects. That's an homage to video games.
The way you say that word is so weird.
Homage.
Thank you.
Homage.
Yeah, that's right.
Ombro.
Dominic de Coco.
There's 2 levels of homages here, and I thought that was it's really cool because the one that we're watching, the film, is like film.
Yeah.
It like film incorporates audio, video, all this stuff. This is incorporating these other mediums into itself, and it's a very dense experience.
Moshception.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the video game stuff, but you're saying like you said, it's kind of a carryover from the comic book, but I also really appreciate how they incorporate comic book storytelling into it, where like there'll be a lot of frames within a frame, like the shot of when Scott is like revealing that he had the bad haircut, and that's why NB broke up with him, or why he thinks NB broke up with him, and he leans against a door, and it creates like a black frame for them to insert a photo, and then he switches sides, and there's another black frame. So good. Or there's a lot of montages of sliding frames, which is reminiscent of comic books, and it's so seamless in this aesthetic of this movie, and it just fits so good.
Maybe this is the reason why, to Riley's point, which I totally agree with, it's like we've seen enough Edgar Wright movies now. We've covered 3 on this podcast that we're familiar with his editing style, but it seems like it works so much better in this movie. And it always worked. In all those movies, it's always been something that makes those movies better. But in this movie, it's like in its purest form, it belongs here.
Yeah,
Totally.
and I think that it's hard because this, like you say, this format is made for Edgar Wright and vice versa. The way that he transforms these comic panels into moving visual language is beautiful. And I think that it makes me kind of annoyed at his other movies because I'm like, you have no reason to be adding all of this extra flair and style, like other than to have extra style. And to me, I've talked about this before, I like a balance of things. I like a balance of like really cool aesthetics and like, substance. I think that there should be a reason for things to be there if you're going to have them there. So, him having these kind of like crazy style stuff in the other movies bothers me, but in this one, as we say,
it fits.
Like
so you're a prisoner to genre. Is what you're saying?
Not a prisoner to genre.
Well, you appreciate it because you're saying like his style. If when it's in a genre of movie where you think it's permissible, that really vibes with you. But
it's not even necessarily the genre. Like I think he could make Hot Fuzz or whatever, Baby Driver, and if it was adapted from a comic book movie and he was using the same thing, I'd be like, oh, this is cool because you're trying to do like a faithful adaptation, not only thematically but like aesthetically. Like you're trying to make this like a living comic book.
I think
And that's
I
cool.
meant comic book as a genre. Comic book adaptation as a genre, which I guess you can argue that it's not because there's so many different genres
Yeah,
of comic book, but
you could have like a drama, comic book, horror, comic
like
book.
Mouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I think I get what you're saying. I think there's an argument there. That's fair. Maybe I'm thinking about it too. It's just I think I'm really trying to explain this subjective feeling that I have that I watch these movies. I'm just kind of annoyed. Like it's.
Well, I kind of get what you're saying. Where I think the other movies, the style is kind of like from the outside in the sense that like he's taking a thing that already exists and then latching onto it and shaping it into what he wants. But with Scott Pilgrim, it feels like this aesthetic comes from the inside out and is an explosion outwards.
Yeah.
So it just feels like a different like place from where it's coming from.
It's almost like it's less of a choice on his part as a creator to do the movie this way.
It has to be this
even though
way.
it clearly is a choice. And because another filmmaker might do this movie and just make it like this super boring, normal, whatever. But like, it almost seems like it's not a choice because it seems so natural given the subject matter.
Yeah.
And the medium and the format and all.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's so interesting because it's not that faithful of an adaptation of the comic books, but it captures the spirit in such a real way. Like it's so far from the source material, but it gets it so right.
That's almost your ideal.
Yeah.
Because you can never really adapt a movie. Like if you try to do it exactly, try to be so faithful, you're gonna get a bad movie.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And ideally, you get something that expands the universe. Like they're working on Last of Us, the TV show now, and it's like because it's a limited series, they can maybe beat for beat show everything they showed in the game. But if you're a fan of the game, why do you want to watch all that again? You want kind of something new,
different.
So it's really a tough act to balance high wire thing.
Yeah. When you say it's not like too faithful of an adaptation, are there like specific
there's like lots of extra storylines. Like they have trouble paying rent and stuff. There's extra characters. There's more going into Scott's past, like him and Kim when they dated.
One thing that kind of bothered me was. Well, not bothered me, but when I thought back, I was like, when I was writing the synopsis, I was about to describe Scott Pilgrim, and I'm like, wait, he's 22 years old. Does he have a job? I'm like, what is he? And in the comic book, he works at a grocery store, I think.
I can't remember.
Something. He has like some basic job.
Did he mention that in this movie?
I don't think
he said grocery store.
Maybe.
I don't
remember.
Yeah. Well, okay, maybe it is, and everything just moves so fast in this movie. Yeah. If it's not like spelled out for you, it's like gone.
Literally spelled out in fridge magnets.
Yeah.
That's a good gag, though, the 8 sideways.
That was great.
Everything.
That's one of my hit picks. I got a bunch of hit picks and only one nitpick.
Yeah.
Well, those are for later.
Well, those are for later.
What part is this?
Just when Wallace is talking to him about Ramona, and Ramona's not calling back, and he's like, everything sucks, and it's just SUX, and he's like, or what sucks? Everything, and he pulls an 8 and puts it sideways, so it's like an infinity symbol. As I explained it, it's not funny.
I didn't even see it. I think I saw that the first time, but I didn't notice it this time.
I want to talk about the aesthetic, though. Like, I think that is the greatest strength of this movie. An aesthetic is in italics with a weird handwriting font.
Yes, absolutely. I can see it.
And it starts right away, too. Like, the alternative Universal logo. Like the 8-bit chiptune intro.
I got two Universal logos.
Yeah, me too.
Really?
Yeah.
I rented it on Google Play, and it played like the traditional normal Universal logo, and then it played the whole song again.
That's a mistake. It's not supposed to do that.
No,
it's supposed to be just the
maybe
chiptune one.
Legally they have to have the unaltered one.
Well, the version I watched didn't have it, and so that chiptune one was supposed to be a placeholder. It was just there for the test audience, but the test audience loved it, so they didn't change it anymore because it was perfect, and it was great. And one of the things I love in this movie is it's actually Toronto. There's so many movies. Yeah, it's shot in Toronto.
Nice.
So there's so many movies that are shot in Canadian cities that it's like, that's New York, that's this. And they even make a gag about that in this movie. Like when they're shooting the Lucas Lee movie, there's the New York backdrop.
Yeah.
And then they rip it open, and then there's the Toronto like skyline behind it. I just love that stuff.
Why is it in Toronto?
Because Bryan Lee O'Malley's Canadian, the guy who wrote it. So it's the comic book set in Toronto.
Oh, okay.
So it'd be like, you'd have to kind of pull an important piece out of it. And then, I mean, like Toronto's like really built into this stuff. Like a lot of the music's based off of the Toronto like post-punk scene. And so like when he wrote the graphic novels, he had playlists for each graphic novel, and he gave it to the music supervisor, who's like a Canadian artist. I can't remember the band name, but he's like the singer from a band, a Canadian post-punk band.
Right.
And like what they did in this movie for the music is they got different artists to be the different bands. Like Beck is Sex Bomb.
Yeah.
So he wrote the music for that.
Yeah.
Metric is Clash of Demon Head. Broken Social System is the Clash of the Boys.
Broken Social Scene.
Broken Social Scene. And I think that does a really good job because each band has kind of a different feel. But I think the music is incredible in this movie.
What's the song that Brie Larson performs when she's singing?
Black Sheep?
Was that a song made for the movie?
Yes, but they perform it.
That's
so
a
my
good song.
girlfriend saw Metric live, and they
Oh, so
perform it.
Metric wrote the song.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
That makes sense. I'm
Yeah.
like, this is catchy.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
my favorite
Brie
song.
Larson's actually singing it.
she's singing the one in the movie, but they didn't release it until this year. That version, because like Metric sings it, so the version on the soundtrack was the Metric sung version.
Oh,
But now they've released the Brie Larson version,
funny,
which
'cause
everyone wanted because they like it.
apparently Brie Larson was a singer, like a singer-songwriter before she got big as an actress.
She's pretty dang good.
It's a
She's trying to-
sick song, and how it is the lead up to the fight when it's all the fast cuts between the faces of everyone giving each other glares is
Yeah.
so perfect.
That is good. I knew she was in this movie. Like I read that, and then I watched the movie. I didn't even place her.
Yeah, she looks so different.
So
She's so
many.
young. And then I just looked up. She's the same age as me. I'm like, God
Larson?
damn it! I hate when you find out someone's successful the same age as you, and you're like, what have I done in my life?
What?
Yeah.
Dude, we're like 30.
I know.
Like all these big actors are really get big when they're
Well-
like early 20s.
Well, like there's that Neil Young song, "Old Man." In one of the verses, he says 24, and there's so much more. Like he wrote that when he was 24, and then now if I play it now, when I played it when I was 24, I was like, sweet.
I mean,
When I
James,
play it now, I'm like, oh,
34,
Now I'm the
34.
old man.
I mean, James, you're working for a giant YouTube
Yeah, you're doing
conglomerate, you know,
Oh, it's all
pretty
relative.
good.
Yeah.
David, you said that Brie Larson was your hall pass,
She's my hall pass.
even if she has the Endgame haircut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would take on a
Larson is your
respectful
hall
date.
pass. Jeez Louise.
I need her to teach me how to respect people better.
Same part of the booth.
What?
Same side of the booth or opposite? Where would you
Whatever
sit?
she feels comfortable with.
What are we talking
What do you?
about?
What would be
I'm
your
so
ideal?
confused.
Well, I mean, I want things to go well.
Same.
Same side of the booth.
Same side of the
I'm
booth.
lost in the metaphor.
See, I don't know
where-
if it's not a metaphor. I actually just don't know. Do you think that's more intimate? Because there's more eye contact and stuff if you're across.
It depends on the shape of the booth.
What-
Anyway,
what kind of
Heart-shaped
booth-
booth.
What booth is this?
He wants some four-dimensional booth where you can simultaneously be beside them and look into their eyes.
you don't experience life in 5 dimensions. Is that just me?
I'm just. Where did the booth come in? What?
Do you know what a
booth-
hall pass is?
Yeah,
It means he would be allowed to go on a date with her regardless of his current relationship.
in a booth.
No.
Have you been to a restaurant?
Okay, we're talking about a restaurant. I didn't miss that. I missed that part.
I want to give a shout out to
Is it a phone booth? What is this?
Just finishing off on the music of this movie, that all the actors learned to play their instruments. So
Yeah.
like him and Steven Stills all learned to play their instruments, and Michael Cera actually played the bass.
Right.
And apparently he was really good, and they had to tone him down so that he was less
but
good.
This is what I don't
Right.
understand.
It makes sense that they're playing a shitty genre of music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess when they're filming,
What
they're
about
actually
you don't
Shots
going-
fired on
You don't
punk.
like garage rock? I had a phase. I like garage rock. I think it's fun.
I think that I wouldn't listen to garage rock really now, but like hearing stuff in this movie, I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
I
it
can get
fits.
back into this.
Yeah, just like the movie. It's like if I was in high school, I might like this.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And I mean, like that was a genre that came really quick and died very quick.
Mm.
Like 2007 to 2010. Like I love the Hives back then. I fucking love them. But now I'm like, I like this.
Yeah, very little of this stuff this type of music is being
it
played
died
now.
very quick.
Interesting.
It's one of those things. I love the title shot of this movie when it's the band playing and they're playing kind of like the main song that they'll play. And it pulls out and it keeps pulling out and keeps pulling out and keeps pulling out. And the room is like
Yeah.
30 feet long.
That was the first shot where I was like, oh yeah, this movie's cool.
Yeah, it's so cool.
That intro, like, as it going through the credits and stuff, I feel like it's really long, but I wasn't annoyed
No.
by how long it was because it's so high energy
Yeah.
and the music is so fun.
Totally. Do you know who suggested putting that title sequence in? Tarantino. He watched like the movie and he's
Really?
like, you need a title sequence.
This guy loves title sequences.
And apparently in the movie, I missed it, but apparently there's a foot shot that was put in for Tarantino.
I was gonna say earlier that I bet Edgar Wright is a Tarantino fan.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that the influence is there. Obviously, they're so different,
Mhm.
but I think the influence is there.
for
While,
sure.
while we're still on the music,
As long as you say that, we're on the music.
yeah, it's true. Well, we were still there. We were there.
All right, continue.
The Clash of Demon Head song is my favorite of the
Oh, it's
movie,
so
but
good.
but it's like strangely, I think my second favorite song is the one done by the band before
Oh, like
Sex
the
Bomb
4
in the
second
first
bombs?
one, where he's just like, the song is called "I Am So Very Sad" or something,
Oh,
and it's like so sad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I love it. I love then the second song when it cuts to Steven, like the Sex Bombs in the backstage, and he's like freaking out, but you can't really hear them because the song's playing.
Yeah.
And he's like really freaking out and the subtitles are there. Something about it is so funny to
That's
me.
the lead singer of the band.
Yeah,
That guy
Steven
freaking out?
Stills. Yeah. I think this movie is hilarious. I don't know if you guys
it's so
laugh.
funny.
I laugh so much, really hard in this movie.
I laughed quite a few times.
Yeah.
I think that it hits you so hard with the stylistic elements so super early on. It took me a little bit to get into the swing of it, but then I think I remember around like the third mark, the third of the way through, I was like, then I started laughing out loud.
Yeah.
Because then I think you're kind of warmed up to the whole idea of it.
Oh yeah.
There's lots of good gags too, and in Edgar Wright fashion, they kind of build on each other. I really like the gag of the bed that they share.
Oh yeah, and they keep coming up.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, the guy that she was dating before is in the bed, and his roommate's in the bed, and then he's in the bed. That was great.
Well, they evolve the joke too, because the first time it's Scott Wallace, then the boyfriend.
Yeah.
But then they do it once where it's Scott, a partner, then Wallace, then a fourth.
Yeah,
So it's like
yeah.
your expectations are kind of like played
He's
with
a
a bit.
punchline.
Yeah, I think the humor is so good. I think even like the bar when they're playing Sex Bomb versus not Clash of Demon Head, but Clash on the Boys.
Yeah.
There's like so many jokes that are in there. Like the moment of the glances when they're all like, "What's going on?" Like Knife shows up in Ramona, and they're like, "There," and then Wallace looks at Stacy's boyfriend. Love it. How did you meet Scott? And Scott looks up and he's like, "Oh no, it is a nightmare," with like the music cue.
Yeah.
Kills me. And then when the other drummer stares at Kim, can't handle it. It kills me.
They have a girl drummer.
Yeah, they hate each other.
Every drummer in this
It's a girl.
movie is a
That's
girl.
yeah.
It's interesting.
Kim's kind of lackluster.
She's a
IMO.
way bigger character in the comic book, and here
Yeah.
she just kind of serves her purpose.
It's actually the delivery that I didn't like.
Oh,
I felt
okay.
like maybe when this movie came out, it would have been good, but her first delivery of the line, I was like, oh, she's one of those characters. Like just kind of a caricature.
But I
Yeah.
think I don't know. I like her. I loved her character in this. I think the one thing that's missing for me, I think, is the fact that like, okay, we know that her and Scott dated, but we really this is if are we getting into criticisms, or this is my main criticism?
Sure, yeah.
Is I just don't understand who these characters are, and like a lot of them have characteristics that don't seem to make sense with
Well,
it. Like he's supposed to be a lady killer. So
and yet he's Michael
yeah.
Cera.
So to bring it back to the Kim thing, I'm like, who is she? Is she's like rude and stuff? And so I can understand why they broke up, but she's like mad at him. So
She sufficiently conveys that she kind of has been damaged by him in the past. Like I don't fault her for that. The way it's almost like, damn, she had this really bad experience in high school, and now it's kind of shaped who she is. And since Scott's the protagonist, and a big part of the story is how he's just an asshole to people.
Yeah.
right.
Well, I like how
makes
the movie kind of plays it off, because the first time I watched it, I didn't realize how big of an asshole he is, and the more I watch it, I'm like, wow, he really is a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And like I think Kim goes to serve to show that really well, and I love like when he's walking through the party with Ramona, he's like, me and Kim were totally cool, and she's like glaring at him.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think the payoff at the end, which is kind of I think the end point of her arc, which is the second time he's in the Chaos Theater, and the first time she's like, we're Sex Bomb and we're here to sell out and make money. But the second time she's like, we're Sex Bomb, we're here to watch Scott Pilgrim kicking some ass.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and they fucking it's so hype.
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
felt like that emotional payoff was enough for me for like the little bit she's in the movie for it to feel worth it.
What do you mean? Do you mean that she forgives him in that moment?
Yeah, because he's
Yeah.
willing to apologize, and like, because I think like the real thing is that he never apologized to her. He pretended like it was all good.
Mm.
And I think that's like there is some dimensionality to how this movie is handling relationships and breakups, and like that's kind of one dimension of how it's trying to approach it. I don't think it goes super in depth, but I think it tries to approach it from multiple directions.
I mean, Scott Pilgrim as a character is lacking emotional intelligence. He's
Yes.
lacking emotional maturity. And I think that it kind of bothered me because that's not really identified explicitly until like the very end of the movie. And so I watched a lot of this movie kind of thinking that because he's the hero, right? And a lot of the times in a movie, you want the hero to be endearing, and the movie is trying to endear you to the hero, but he's nothing but an ass the entire movie. and we only really want him to succeed or like him because he's the main character and we're following his journey.
Totally.
But
I think that's the point the movie's trying to make, is that like just because you think you're the main protagonist in your story doesn't mean you should go around hurting people.
Right.
Like you have to be in control of what you're doing.
I think you can take that away.
Yeah.
I think just as like an experiential thing, as like going on a ride, it's really not identified for you that
That's
this
fair.
is a problematic thing, and everyone agrees that it's problematic until the very end. Although in hindsight, you're like, okay, Kim calls him an idiot. His sister calls him an idiot.
Stan leaves him.
What's Aubrey Plaza's character calls him an
Julie,
idiot. Yeah. And so
I
like
love
they're all
her.
calling him that, but like at the same time, I feel like we're also used to, well, these are all female characters calling a guy an idiot, and I feel like we're used to that happening maybe
But
sometimes.
he's also like a bumbling loser.
Mm.
Like, and he's got that Michael Cera like no confidence thing going on.
Yeah, it could just be that he's actually a decent person,
And
but he just like isn't very good.
But
at
no,
stuff.
we know he's not though, because all his friends in the band are like, you're dating this high school, like you're
Yeah,
too
they
old
hate
for
him.
her.
Yeah.
And they show that he's like a careless prick a lot of the time. Like he's like, when Knives comes to their house at the band practice, he's like, I'll take your coat, takes it, drops it on the ground.
Yeah.
Or like at the thrift store, there's a sign that says like, do not sit, and he's sitting on the chair.
Yeah,
Like, he just like
yeah.
is a
Or
careless
when-
loser.
When the girl that he likes, Ramona, changes her hair color, and then he's like miffed,
Yeah.
and
Right.
that's like an attack on him because it had nothing to do with him.
So maybe
he can't control that, and he's so insecure that like shakes him. He doesn't
Okay,
like it.
maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should modify what I'm saying. Then it's not that it's not clear. It's that it's annoying that he is as much of an asshole.
Well,
as
and
he
we're
is.
still endeared to him because he's
Yeah.
a protagonist.
Yeah.
We,
right.
Like we identify with characters who are vulnerable, and we see that he is self-conscious about his hair, and so we're like, okay, he's not a perfect person, so
Yeah.
I relate to him a little bit. But
Yeah.
they have that at the same time that he's shown as a piece of shit.
That's what it is. It's the cognitive dissonance.
There you go.
It's instigated in me as a viewer because I'm like, I know that I want you to succeed and I'm following your journey, but at the same time I
You're
hate
such
you.
an asshole. Treats
And
Knives so
I'm
badly.
irritated.
Well, you
Yeah.
Treat
have-
Knives better.
That's
Yeah.
the relationship with every protagonist in a sense, right? They always have things that need fixing, but they always have something about them that you're gonna stick around and watch.
Right. But often the things that need fixing aren't so annoying.
Sure.
Like I'm like, I would hate you in real
Yeah.
life.
I think it's so interesting because Michael Cera was always Edgar Wright's first choice.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
because he got hired to direct this movie many years before they made it, and he watched Arrested Development and saw Michael Cera and was like, "That's Scott." And I'm like, "Really?" Because like in the
Yeah.
comic, Scott's like, "Yeah, you cool lady killer." And
Is he
Michael Cera-
cool?
Yeah, he's supposed to be like pretty cool. He's
See, this is the thing. It's confusing to me as like from a
Yeah.
meta perspective. We know Michael Cera as this guy who's like,
he's a shy loser.
yeah, and he's like a good person,
Yeah.
but he's just a shy
But
loser.
here's why I like it is that, and like we're kind of criticizing it, and maybe it's just like approaching the same conclusion from different directions. I think it really plays with audience expectations, and you're so forgiving of his assholeness because he's Michael Cera. You're like, oh, it's just like he's awkward in this, but it's like, no, if you watch the movie, he's like full through and through an asshole, but because he's Michael Cera, you're forgiving of it for a way
Yeah.
longer than you
That's
would be with
probably a
anyone
big-
else.
Yeah,
part
like
of
what
it,
if it was Chris Evans the whole time?
Yeah, you'd be like, what a dick. If he was just like some handsome dude, you'd be like, what a cocky cock.
Yeah. I think that
And he
adds to the
beats up
comedy.
Michael Cera as the second ex.
It also adds to the comedy of like seeing Michael Cera do all these like superhero like fight moves and punches
Totally.
and stuff and like leaping
But
in the air.
they convince me that he's fighting. Like
Yeah.
they do a really good job of blending CG and the stunt people and like cutting between it. That like there's enough of Michael Cera doing the fighting that I'm like, yeah, Michael Cera's like a superhero.
100%.
Yeah, I
Although-
was really convinced.
Although it's also something that bothers me because I'm like, this is another characteristic of his character that doesn't make any sense to me. He's a shy loser, or he's like a dorky loser, but he's a lady killer and he goes through ladies like crazy. And he's also a really good fighter.
Then we're
Like,
getting
I don't know
into,
what's
we're
the-
getting into the metaphor of the movie with the fighting, because like the fighting is like
Obviously,
clearly,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
like the analogy of the movie of like
Right.
being willing to fight for your ex or for your new partner,
Yeah.
working through their dating history, and it's I love it. I think it's such a fun concept.
But I also think it's kind of like a little boy concept. It's kind of like, wouldn't it be cool if instead of like growing emotionally, you could just punch your way to love?
Well, it all comes from the idea when he started dating, I think, his current wife, Bryan Lee O'Malley, found out that she had dated 3 different Matthews. And so he started the story of the League of Matthews.
Oh, that's
and then it
great.
evolved into the League of Evil Exes.
That's pretty cool.
And the only Matthew is Matthew Patel. But yeah, I think I agree. It's kind of like a simple concept. And I think it works. And like,
It's a good premise, though.
totally, it's a great
It's a
premise.
log
Yeah.
line.
Yeah, and it's fucking fun.
In the comic book, I know that there is more kind of like, because we watched this movie and it's sort of a question the whole time of like whether what we're seeing in terms of these supernatural elements are actually occurring in this universe or whether it's sort of like a metaphor for like the emotional states of what's going on and blah, blah, blah. Like they're not actually fighting. They're just kind of like in tension. But in the comic book, it's very clear
Yeah.
that this is like a superhero, supernatural, magical, whatever world. Ramona very explicitly goes through subspace at certain times. It's like a major plot point. And in this one, we get like a reference to subspace.
Subspace.
Like he has the dream about her because she's like, oh, there's just a subspace highway that
And
goes
it's like,
right
yeah,
through your head.
you could interpret it as like a weird thing she says, like a jokey
Yeah.
thing, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like clearly by the end of the movie, okay,
They're fighting.
it's not a metaphor.
No.
We know that it's explicit, but I going back to the thing about like the fighting not making sense, I'm like, hey, if this is an emotional thing, it totally makes sense. But if it's like an actual in-universe mechanic of like these people have superpowers and they're fighting, it's like, why is he a really good fighter? Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know that it's him alone. It could be the case that in this universe, literally everyone we see on the screen could be in a crazy fight like that, and it's just that he's the one who has a conflict right now. Like you and I could go and get in bar fights at any day of the week, but we don't. So maybe it's just like his roommate can fight like that, and his dad can fight like that, and everybody can.
In the
but
comic,
they just don't.
no one's
But he
surprised.
defeats everybody. He defeats all the exes.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
because he's the protagonist. But in the comic, it's no one's surprised that he can do this. They've seen him fight. Everyone fights. Like it's like a superhero world.
In the comic,
Yeah,
they're like, Scott's a good
I
fighter.
think that's something they fumble up a little bit here is the surprise when he fights back. That they make a
Interesting.
big deal of it because it's like, no, it's supposed to be like, that's just normal, is everyone fights. Like he's just a great fighter.
well, that surprise is like he does like a huge uppercut on Matthew like right away when he's attacked.
I love it. I think it's a great moment. when
He
he's flying.
counters.
Yeah, he like blocks. boom.
Reversal.
I freaking love it.
Yeah, it's a good moment.
Yeah, I love. And when Wallace is like, fight!
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I love it. Ugh.
Also, Wallace is Kieran Culkin.
is
Macaulay
perfect.
Culkin's brother.
He is so perfect for this role.
He's
I
so
love
good.
him so much.
And I'm like,
I
why
couldn't
has he
place it.
been in-
When you look at him, you're like, am I looking at a deep fake? What the hell is wrong? Something's just not right in your brain.
Yeah.
I'm like, is that Daniel Radcliffe? Like,
it's like
Yeah.
it's someone I know.
So, like, I guess I'm looking at his IMDb and he's been in stuff somewhat regularly, but like, man, I'm like, I really like him in this movie, and I'm wondering why he hasn't been in more stuff. It's annoying.
he was great.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah.
Okay,
Um,
go
I think. Oh,
Go ahead.
I
You
think
go.
my biggest problem in terms of characters is actually Ramona.
Yes.
I think that they do a lot to define her quirks and her fun and stuff, but I don't buy her. I don't buy at first that she would date Scott.
Yes,
No.
thank you.
Yeah,
Please,
no.
let's,
Give us
let's
some good
dwell here
reason.
for a
Yeah,
second,
yeah,
because
yeah.
that actually makes me so angry. It's like he gave this speech when he's around Knives, who he's totally chill around.
Yeah.
He talks about how Pac-Man's origin story or whatever. So we know how that's supposed to go. And then he delivers it again to Ramona, and he flubs it so expertly. He sucks so bad, and yet she still agrees to go on a date with him.
Yeah.
Which right away I'm like, nope.
yeah.
Well, and it's when he's super weird at the Amazon delivery too. Like it's just been awkward. He's like, "You were in my dream." Like I don't know. It's just so uncomfortable.
brutal
and
that-
weird.
I guess she's supposed to be like super damaged and just like wants a boyfriend for reasons.
Well, she's just like she's like the epitome of manic pixie dream girl.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's how he came up with her. Was like, okay, manic pixie dream girl. I'll make a manic pixie dream girl.
He's
I
got
do-
Suicide
I do-
Girls wallpapers on his PC.
Yeah,
I do appreciate how Scott and Ramona are kind of like, they're not foils per se, but they kind of have like some parallels there where they have both gone through this like sequential list of ex people, and they're trying to deal with like unresolved trauma, or not trauma, but like unresolved shittiness on their own part and other people's. And Scott is trying to do that by actively dating someone else who's going to take his mind off this, and Ramona's trying to deal with it by escaping away from where she was and coming to Toronto or whatever and doing, and I think that Scott represents sort of like another escape where she's just going about her life, and then this guy's like, hey, you want to go on a date? And she's like, this is something new that is not something I've done. I'm just trying to get away from my past. Okay, fine.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Let's almost have sex. It's like, okay, what? Not only did I not believe that you guys are going to go on a date, but now I super don't believe that you like almost get down on that date.
It's definitely weird. Although it's sort of saved by her being like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm like, okay, so she's just like fickle. She just like goes with her feelings in any moment. Like, I feel like it now. I don't feel like it later.
It's so funny that in a movie with like hipster demon chicks, the romance is the least believable thing.
Yeah, it truly is, man. They just don't have any chemistry together.
No.
And it really matters because I think it throws into jeopardy the stakes of the movie. Because the whole movie is like the pursuit of this girl. But it's like, why are you even pursuing her? Because you guys don't even like get along especially well.
That is a big thing.
And
that bugs
I think
me
they
for
could have gotten there and made a good point about it all. How like you said, Scott's kind of escaping his pain by trying to win a new woman.
Yeah.
And they could have got there, but I think the ending really fucks it up by making him and Ramona kind of end up together. I think in the comic book, there's a whole period where he goes depressed and is by himself and is like doing soul searching before the end happens, where he gets back with Ramona or Knives. I can't even remember what it ends up with.
I think he ends up with Ramona in the book.
Yeah, but the movie ending is so like unfinished.
Okay, before we get
It's
to
so
that,
quick. All of the character development and learning happens like in like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So wait, you're talking about the ending when he's talking to Ramona and they
and
okay,
knives.
So before we get to that though,
yeah.
let's talk about the swords. So he
I
gets
love
the
that.
2 swords, one's love and one's self-respect, right? So my question is, are those, given what we've been shown is like his faults at the beginning of the movie, are those the answers? Like, is self-respect the thing that he needs to not be a douche to people? At first, I kind of thought no. At first, I thought he needs to respect other people. But then I thought about it for a bit, and I was like, actually, I think this is true.
Yeah.
I think this is true.
I buy it. I think it's such a good reversal because like the movie trope is like the power of love will defeat anything. But I think that self-respect, he doesn't really respect himself.
It's like an early, like for
gotta love
myself
yourself before.
personally. Yeah, I was a bigger douchebag than Scott throughout college, and it wasn't until I was like, I don't know, 22, 24 that I kind of like knew who I was, and until then, it's so annoying.
It's true. Until you know yourself, you can't treat others properly. Like you have to love yourself and respect yourself before you can not be constantly harming others because you're just so unsure of your place that you need constant gratification, which is such an unhealthy place.
It kind of bothers me that it is, well, okay, so it didn't really bother me that much when I was watching the movie, but after learning about what the book does differently in that scene, I think the book did it way better, where in the book, Ramona and Scott both get swords after like dealing with their shit. Ramona has her own like journey, and I think that's like she comes to an understanding in this one, but it's very much secondary to Scott. And I think in the book, she goes on her own journey. She gets the power of love because she learns to love herself and like come to grips with the like her past. Scott gets the power of understanding, which I think is like a bit more nuanced than like self-respect, because you can respect yourself to an unhealthy degree, but like understanding just means that you like are no longer ignorant, you're no longer running, you're like, okay, I get what's going on, I accept this. So and I also really like the idea of them both having swords, and
I
then
like that
both
too.
kind of going for it,
because
they are very, very similar in this movie, but like Ramona is in many ways relegated to this like passive object instead of being a fellow character.
Yeah, if they both get swords, then it really is spelled out. They both are now equipped for the world.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if they both get swords and then they have a tender moment together at the end, but ultimately part ways, because that's what's best for both of them, that would be satisfying. I'd be satisfied even though they're not together.
Right.
I think it is a good moment in the movie, though. It could be better, but when he pulls out the second sword, and you're like, oh, this is good, and like the numbers are higher, and it's got a better animation, and then he fights one hits Gideon, you're like, yeah, this is pretty sick.
That's awesome. But what happens when he talks to Ramona in the street?
What do you mean, in the movie?
Yeah, in the movie. She walks away, right?
Yeah.
And then he goes and talks
I think
to her again.
they're not like together, but they're like, we're gonna give it a shot, kind of thing, and like they're gonna go through the door and see what happens.
You're talking about the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what happens. I mean, she walks away because she's like, no, I'm too damaged. Like, even after all this, like, we're just going to hurt each other. So let's just not. And Knives is like, what are you doing? Go after her. Because she has also come to terms with the fact that, like, this relationship's unhealthy and she's not meant to be with Scott.
Because Knives says, I'm too cool for you.
I like that line.
Yeah, it's like a joke. But yeah.
I think
that's good, though.
In my opinion, based on what's happened in the movie, the proper answer that Scott should have done is gone away and been single for a year. He shouldn't be dating anyone.
I like
it's
the
a
idea
movie.
of them.
He has to have like a romance at the end. But
They should have just got with his roommate. Then he didn't have to move either.
Oh, Wallace? Yeah, sure.
I like the idea.
No, Wallace is too good for Scott.
It's way more satisfying to have him get together with Ramona at the end. So it's like you kind of have to have that in like this movie that's meant for wide audiences and stuff. But I completely agree with you that it sounds like in the book he had more of a period where he was by himself and he was wrestling with his own faults, and it was more of a journey to come to that place instead of I'm fighting for Ramona. Like two people have to fight to win a human being.
Yeah.
And then he dies. And then while he's dead, he's like, wait.
Yeah.
It comes back immediately. And within the space of like 2 minutes, it's like, here's the lesson of the movie.
And for both all his lost moments of the movie, which is that, and then like when Gideon's kind of got Ramona back under his thumb, it's the power of love that drives him forward. It's the like, oh wow, Ramona is under his has this chip that's controlling her. Like I need to fight for her, or like like Wallace giving him a pep talk about love, and it kind of is confused, I think, a little bit with like the sword pulling out, where it is love that powers him to finally win, even though the movie's trying to be like, oh, you need more than love.
Yeah, but I think I agree with you, James, that from a thematic perspective, this is great for teenagers, where it's like they need to learn these really basic lessons of, hey, you can't let other people define you, and you can't seek comfort in other people your entire life. You have to be like comfortable with yourself and stuff. And that's like really a developmental lesson to learn, but it's definitely less of like a mature, nuanced, if it was meant for older audiences, I think the lesson would be a little bit more nuanced and mature, and maybe we would get Scott, ending up by himself because that's what he really needs instead.
But I mean, it would be a completely different movie because this movie's about young 20-year-olds who are struggling to make ends meet and want to be bands. And it's like, it's a movie for a specific age group. And like, we're too old now. We're boomers. We don't get it.
What do you guys, we're boomers now. Yeah, you age into being a boomer. What do you think of the microchip on the neck thing?
So dumb.
Yeah.
So dumb.
It's kind of hand wavy. It kind of means
it's
like
different in the book.
She wouldn't, like the only reason, she's literally under his spell.
Yeah, they're removing
she wouldn't make
any
those
of her
decisions.
agency.
Yeah. Well, I think it would have been more nuanced again to show her plant the chip on herself.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Because then it shows like, yeah, she is under his influence, but that's like a form of self-harm.
Yeah.
And that's a mental cycle that people can get into where they know they're with an abuser, but they think they deserve it.
And I think they try and get there with when she explains how they started dating, and she's like, oh, like I loved him, but he didn't care about me, and that's what made me so crazy about him. But yeah, I think you're right. If they gave her a little bit more agency with choosing to have the chip on her neck.
Another thing that's cool is when on their first date, when they're about to get it on, and then she pulls the plug on that, she's kind of doing the same thing Gideon did to her. Not explicitly, but she was into him, and then he didn't care, and so now that's a tactic in her repertoire, and she's using that against Scott.
Yeah,
that's intentional? Because people definitely do that.
Yeah, I think so. And I think like the movie is playing with that dimension a little bit, like the way that Scott and Ramona's relationship, like you said, they mirror each other, and it gives dimensionality. I think like when envy's brought into the picture, and there's kind of like a weird thing with Todd, I think that's more interesting. And I think like there's a lot of I don't know, like the nuances between how these relationships are and like how they work together to me is like interesting, about like how you're constantly trying to compare yourself to their exes, but you can't beat them at what they're good at. You have to kind of find your own thing. I don't know.
Yeah, in terms of the question of is this actually happening, or is this just like an emotional maturity, like mental battle that you go through in your own mind? It kind of, if it's gonna be the latter, it's kind of that experience of going to a party where your ex is there and their new partner is there, and you have to like your monkey brain is like, oh, I'm just like not gonna talk to this person, I'm gonna avoid them. But then when you get older, the goal is for that person to be your best friend at the end of the night. In a way, like if not to force that, but if you actually would get along with them, then there should be no barrier to getting along with them. You should actually just treat them like a totally like any other stranger at the party, right?
Yeah, I think so. There's no microchip in the book, but Gideon has memory manipulation abilities. So he manipulates people's memories so that they kind of like end up doing what he wants.
Well, I think that they talk a little bit about that last, because he's clearly a gaslighting manipulator,
right?
Even in the movie, and I think that's kind of what he represents in relationships, is the gaslighting manipulator.
I also think, but I think also in the book, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, audience, I don't know if you remember, but I think Ramona doesn't get back with Gideon. I think in the end, he's kind of like holding her captive against her will.
We don't really see them together. It's like she's like at the foot of his throne kind of thing.
But in this one, it's like, I mean, once we find out it's a microchip, it's like, okay, that makes sense. But up till that point, she's like, I just can't help myself around him. And that just bothered me. I'm like, that's dumb.
That's fair.
It's like, you know that he's abusive, and know that he's, well, whatever.
But he's Jason Schwartzman. That's perfect.
I love Jason Schwartzman.
Casting.
He's funny in this movie.
Wish that he could be in more things.
Yeah.
He's so good.
He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I've been feeling so bad for this. And he's like, oh, no hard feelings, right? No hard feelings.
Oh, he's so smarmy.
Have you guys seen Rushmore?
Yeah, I love Rushmore.
Yeah. He's just like, it's like that's his breakout role, and it's like an acting showcase for him.
Good.
I rewatched it recently, and I
me
was
too.
Like,
weirdly,
Me too.
Ah,
what? Oh my god!
Fun fact, I rewatched it recently because my baby is addicted to Grand Budapest Hotel.
Oh, wow.
So like anytime that he's getting super upset and crying, nothing is working, we put on Grand Budapest Hotel and he's like, huh.
Well, it's so funny.
So you're trying to branch out. You've seen Grand Budapest so many times now.
Yeah, so I've seen it like probably 100 times now. So like now I was kind of like, oh, what other Wes
Is he like
Anderson
Life
thing?
Aquatic? He probably would like
he was
Life
doing
Aquatic,
okay
The
with
Color.
Life Aquatic, but
Not
then
Rushmore. Or not Royal Tenenbaums. I don't think he'll like Royal Tenenbaums.
No. It has to be this sort of like very colorful, the 4:3 aspect ratio. Like, it's all.
I had the note in my thing that the Scott Pilgrim is kind of the like Wes Anderson has Grand Budapest. I think the Scott Pilgrim is kind of Edgar Wright's, where they started with a style and it evolved, but then they had like a movie where they go like so far past their style, but it's not obnoxious. It's just like the source material. And to me, Scott Pilgrim is like Grand Budapest, where Grand Budapest is like, it's so full
I don't know
on
if
Wes
there's a name
Anderson.
for this effect, but we've talked about it before, where it's like you make your breakout role, people are like, that's a little different. Then you make your second movie where like Pulp Fiction, we're like, that's awesome. And that's probably the mainstream one that people like the most. But then in your third movie, it's like the most crystallized version of you.
Yep.
That's Kill Bill or Grand Budapest. And then after that, you're a caricature of yourself. And that's like Hateful Eight and Inglourious Basterds stuff where it's like too Tarantino-y or too Wes Anderson-y.
Yeah.
What has Edgar Wright made since?
That's Baby Driver.
Baby Driver. Last Night at Soho is coming out in the fall now. I'm excited about that.
Which one?
Last Night in Soho.
Oh, yeah. We'll have to see.
Does that mean final night or previous night?
I don't know. We're gonna find
Maybe
out.
it's a time travel movie.
Oh
shit.
my
It's like
gosh.
it's more surreal than I realized when I first saw it. I was like, oh, this was boring. But
It's a Christopher Nolan fest.
We were
No.
we were talking about the exes before, and I didn't get to say this, but like I also appreciate how they're all very different from each other, and I think anytime a video game or a story or anything can have all of these different characters kind of at the same tier, but very, very different.
Yep.
I really appreciate that. However, I gotta say that these exes are kind of confusing to me as in terms of like what's your thing, what's your stick? Like I do appreciate how they call out Matthew Patel. They're like, what is with your outfit? Like, because when I first saw him, I'm like, what subculture does this guy belong to? He's wearing like a striped shirt.
Well, he's like a middle schooler. He's like dressed like a middle schooler. Like
That's supposed to be what it is?
I think to me that reads as what a middle schooler thinks is cool.
He's just like an emo
Yeah.
teen kid.
Well, he's emo, but he's wearing like bright clothes. I don't know. I was just very,
Yeah.
and he said like pirates are cool. I don't
Yeah.
know. And then we
No.
got Lucas Lee. Okay, Chris Evans' character
Yeah.
is confusing to me
The
also
best.
because he's got the horrible chin strap beard and the leather jacket and stuff. I'm like, okay, you seem like an A-list actor, but then he's like a skateboard bro, and that just felt weird. I'm like, that's a different archetype.
No, I think it all plays together. Like he's like the ex-skateboarder trying to go legit as an actor.
I think
it all works. I want to go through the ex-boyfriends in order of how bad to good. And the worst, we agree, I hope, 𝘔𝘠𝘤𝘤𝘠𝘠 twins, worst fight.
Sure.
The song that's playing is kind of cool when they do the battle of the bands against each other. It's kind of cool, but they don't do very much. Matthew Patel, we've been through that. Roxy, it's okay. It's a pretty good fight. I think the fight itself is pretty cool.
It's conceptually funny. Good.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, exes.
She's my favorite just in terms of like,
it's a girl.
It's
cool.
enjoyable to watch.
Totally. I like the pre-fight too when like in the snow.
They're like, oh, I'd love to stay around, darling, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, what's that from? My brain!
My brain.
Yeah, that was funny.
And I like when Ramona has to like, Scott's like, I don't think I can hit a girl. And like Ramona has to like fight for him.
Oh, that was good too. Yeah.
I think I
hated
like
that.
I think it's funny.
I thought that was so irritating.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, what is this? I don't know. There's a couple points in this movie where I'm like, okay, what was it made? 2010?
Yeah, there's a couple toxic things in this that haven't aged well.
Not toxic, but like there's
We
a
can
couple
get
things
into
where
that
I'm
in a
just like,
bit.
oh, I don't think that would happen today. Like the thing, oh, I can't hit a girl. I'm like, okay, well, I don't
today
know.
you can slap the shit out of girls.
you can
No.
you can
What are
hit
you
anybody.
talking about?
Well, I don't know. It's particularly in a superhero movie where it's like everyone's got superpowers. They're all trying to literally kill each other. You can hit a girl, dude. Like, I don't know.
It's to make the fight different. Because if Scott had just straight up fisticuffed her, then it's like we've already had him fisticuff people.
Fisticuff.
But somebody else already hit a girl before this, the vegan guy.
But that's so atrocious when he does it.
Yeah.
You
Also-
knocked the highlights out of her hair. He knocked the highlights out of her hair.
Tangent.
That was awesome.
Tangent, but Young Neil is my favorite
He's
character
so funny
in this movie.
Yeah.
He's my favorite character.
What do
He's-
you play? That's kind of a good
complicated question. And like when they're on the Battle of the Bands, he's like he's leaning on the amp and just like playing with the patch cord. He's just like trying to sing along. He gets the lyrics wrong.
My.
Oh, that was funny. Yeah.
He punched the highlights out of her hair.
I love that. It's so funny.
I love when he gets the lyrics wrong because he did it the same way that people do it in real life.
Yeah.
You start saying one word and then you
Yeah. Why hasn't he been in more
He's
stuff?
in some stuff.
Johnny Simmons.
Johnny Simmons.
Yeah.
Who's your next fight?
The Gideon fight. I think that's a good fight. But it's also like, yeah, I think it carries a lot of, it's the climax of the movie, so it carries a lot of momentum from that. But I think that like a lot of the character stuff's just okay. I think that the sword fight goes on a little bit too long.
I was happy that it had weapons.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's fine.
switched it up a
changed
bit. By
It's a
then.
small nitpick, but
Yeah.
I wish the henchman also had swords.
Yeah, that's
Because
fair.
it's kind of lame to have him just like slashing people,
Yeah.
one hitting them into coins.
I think it's hyped the second time.
When they're just coming at him with fists
Yeah.
and he got a sword. It's like, obviously you're gonna win.
It's a video
less
game.
badass.
It's
than
a
it could
video
be.
It would have been really crazy 88 Kill Bill vibes if they had swords too.
That's true.
Or it's any type of weapon.
But then
Maces.
Sure.
yeah, but then we're into the two 10 out of 10 fights, in my opinion. I think Todd is the second best fight. I think that fight is so
That was my
fun.
favorite, I think. When
It's so
he
fun.
came out as vegan, I thought that was so funny.
I think the visual is so strong too when he like kind of rises up and it becomes a silhouette with like the beams. It's awesome.
The lens flares.
Yeah.
I thought that was such a cool visual motif to use as like,
We're fighting now.
well, and for Todd's visual
Oh, yeah.
motif, it's like kind of lens flare, like the edges of a
Yeah.
lens type thing. And I was like, it's not just kind of like magical energy stuff. It's like it seems like a physical effect.
Yeah.
Chromatic
Cool.
aberration.
Yeah, sure.
We're just better than other people. I think that whole
And I
concept
love
is
how it
better than
ends, how he gets intercepted by these like vegan police guys.
Okay,
That was
chickens,
wacky and
chickens not
hilarious.
vegan.
I think I laughed during that scene, but I was also kind of annoyed because I'm like, this is going a bit over the top, even for Scott
Yeah,
Pilgrim,
yeah.
where it's like there's vegan police
Yeah.
and they know when you have like when you've eaten
Half and
something
half,
not
yeah.
vegan. Yeah,
I-
I'm like, this is an SNL skit now. all
For
of a
sure.
sudden.
It's funny.
I really
It's
liked
funny.
it.
And then when they
high
run away, they high
five.
five. Yeah.
Well, it's crazy that like they got like big, like moderately famous actors to play those roles because it's such a throwaway role. But it's like, oh, I recognize both those
Yeah,
people.
Thomas
Who are they?
Jane.
And the other guy. I don't
Yeah.
That's
we
okay.
I recognize
yeah,
him.
recognize
I do
him.
recognize him. But
Yeah, I think the best fight is the Lucas Lee one though. I think it's so fun and conceptual. Like when it's revealed that it's actually stunt double that's fighting, and then he has to fight all the stunt doubles. And even when
Oh,
he
that
throws,
was funny.
when he throws him to Casa Loma and he like falls down a bunch of times, and it rolls into a shot of actual Michael Cera.
Yeah.
Like, it all looks so good. And then he has to beat him by like goading him into skateboarding. It's so
Yeah,
stupid.
but that's the lamest part of it though, because
100%.
it's like not a real fight because of that. That's why I would say the vegan fight's funnier.
It would be cool if
No,
he
but
defeated him with some sort of skill that he had acquired or some sort
But
of
I think
like.
though each fight kind of represents sort of an emotional growth that Scott has to do. Like he has to learn to like not be a cocky cock. Like he has to
But see, okay.
to like throw away a little bit of pride to beat him, and he has to like outsmart. I don't know.
Okay, so
I'm being generous here for sure.
that is being generous because I agree. So like the movie very clearly has a video game structure where there's all these mini bosses and then the big boss at the end, right? And normally, I watched a video essay where this guy was likening it to Zelda, where you go and beat a dungeon and you get a certain weapon, you get a bow. All right. And then the next boss, you're going to need that bow to beat that boss. And then once you beat that boss, you get another tool that will, be important for the next one. And so I was like, yes, that is how video games work. But this movie has the kind of like overarching structure there, but it doesn't have that key element that is also needed for this, like, for understanding character.
You really
growth.
could have just jumbled up the fight.
Yeah. You could put them in any order and they would still make sense.
That's fair.
And what that leaves us with is this situation I've talked about where you have this 2 minutes of character development at the end, and that's when he learns the lesson. And you could basically just jump from the first 20 minutes of the movie to the end and hardly anything would change. So I wish that there was a bit more of like, he learns this one thing and he uses that to defeat this guy.
Yeah,
And
that sounds great, but also very difficult.
it would
for
sure.
sound really difficult to do that in a way, in the time budget you have, and to do it in a way that's like succinct. And especially to do it in a way that's a surprise, because in this movie, the reveal that at the end it's about his emotional growth is almost like a surprise. It's almost a twist,
Right.
because the whole time he thinks he's just like kicking ass and he's gonna win the
Yeah.
girl, and he just has to get these fights out of his way. But
I could
then
s-
it's revealed that these fights are actually helping
Yeah,
him.
that's fair.
And he gets
Well-
the self-respect in the end.
So that's the thing. I guess I could see that argument where it's powerful because you don't realize what he has to do in order to win. You don't realize that the real problem here is that he doesn't respect himself or that he doesn't understand himself. And so it's a surprise when it comes out at the end. But So you can make an argument that these fights, they have these little twists in them, and he does this little clever thing where he like spikes the drink with half and half, and that's how he wins. So I can see that, but I think it would be better if the way that he wins the fights has something to do with that journey as well.
I think that's fair because he outsmarts him, but it's like, is that outsmarting him, or is the outsmarting him symbolizing that he's grown and changed? Probably not.
Because the end result is that I feel like the moral of the story is just kind of shoehorned in at the end instead of being like a central.
I don't think it's shoehorned in because I kind of agree with what James is saying, where like the moral of the story is kind of the twist, where it's like you think that you just have to fight harder. You think you just have to beat people and then you'll be a good partner, but it's like, no, like you have to grow, you have to do all these things, and that's the importance of it. And I think that like delaying that message, maybe it makes it less impactful or makes it less deep, but it kind of makes it, I think, more approachable for young people because you're like, sick, fighting. Yeah, like I gotta win my next girlfriend. I gotta like fight for her. Oh no, actually, I have to do like self-discovery. I have to grow. I have to do that, and maybe that's what they were going for.
I think that's a good point.
I think it would have been possible to satisfy both of you.
That's fair,
but it just would have taken such subtlety that it would have been really challenging.
I think my conclusion on this topic here is probably the same as what I said before, where because it's targeted at this particular group, it works. If it was targeted at older people, it would have to be more complex.
And they just focused on different things in this movie. Like they put a lot of energy into the production design and
the visuals,
aesthetics.
Man, hip pick. It's the only axe kick in cinema that I think looks fucking sick.
Yo,
when Ramona axe kicks her down. Whatever that stunt performer did looks awesome. She just like
sick.
Flips down. I was like, this is awesome axe kick.
I really like a good axe. And I'm not even joking. This is like a Riley style joke. I really love a good axe kick, but axe kicks are sick.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That's interesting. I gotta think about why that's a Riley joke.
You
just like say something super obvious, but it's like,
you are. Yeah. I gotta say, the fight choreography is so good in this movie.
So good.
And particularly after watching Mortal Kombat, where like the whole idea...
Who was it in that episode who was like, man, they should take some notes from the crew of Scott Pilgrim?
Oh, I didn't see that.
One of you said that.
Oh, probably.
I was thinking about it.
I made a comparison to Marvel, but I don't...
Anyway.
Yeah, after watching Mortal Kombat, a movie that is supposed to be about fighting, the whole point you're going to see the movie is because of the fights, and then coming away from it being like, that was super lame. There was no fight moment where I was like, hell yeah. Watching this movie, there are numerous points where I was like, hell yeah, like this axe kick moment.
Totally.
And I'm like, what? It just highlights how horrible that movie was.
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, I think they just start with the wrong starting point. So like, cool, we have this IP, okay? And we're going to run with that. And we'll get VFX, it'll look cool. And we'll do fan service. But what they need to do is go the other way where you're like, we have this guy who's really good at fighting. We have Tony Jaa. We have the people who made The Raid. Let's make a movie around their skills.
Yes.
And they need to marry those two things.
Yeah.
It's
they had one of the guys from The Raid.
Really wish in Mortal Kombat.
Sub-Zero was from The Raid.
Oh, nice. Hey, I really wish these Hollywood people would like start
listening to
people.
us.
Well, okay. What's a good example? Marvel? No, I don't know.
For awesome action?
We don't know because we don't know what you're talking about yet.
Time and time again, when a Hollywood studio is like, all right, we're going to make a reboot of something, we're going to make a new entry in this franchise, let's hire people who are actually passionate about it and who like know what they're doing instead of hiring people who maybe did another movie that's completely unrelated and like we think they're a good filmmaker for other reasons and let's get them on this one. And they screw it up because they're not an actual true hardcore
they're not
fan.
trying to find the people that are best for the job. They're trying to find the people that are going to do within budget and do good enough job that they can sell the tickets.
So what do you guys think of the director of Nomadland making Eternals?
I'm super into that. I think that's great. I think like having more artistic vision behind like Marvel movies is great. Like getting like auteurs to make movies. I'm super into that.
It's slightly scary to me, but I have confidence in Marvel's in like Kevin Feige's direction of the whole friggin' thing that they won't let it be too horrible. Even if it would tend to be horrible, like I don't think that it would be.
I think Marvel's done a decent job.
They have the track record of letting people like be weird and different and it turning out to be awesome.
I think it's so fascinating because like obviously hiring James Gunn for the Guardians of the Galaxy movies was a huge success, and then DC just took him. Just like we want like a movie like
he got
Guardians of the Galaxy.
He got canceled for tweets.
Yeah, but then he got hired back.
By Marvel?
Yeah, he's doing Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Yeah. But that was after he did Suicide Squad.
Yeah. Sure. Which John Cena is walking around Vancouver, guys, in his outfit. I need to find him. I need to see
at this moment?
not well, like a couple days ago, he was just like walking around in his peacekeeper outfit on the streets of Vancouver. I actually know one of our mutual friends. Their boyfriend's his stuntman on their new movie.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm pretty jealous. I'm actually very jealous.
Okay, one of my last points that I want to make is the fact that they draw this like specific attention to the fact that Knives Chow is Chinese.
Yes, I was gonna say that, and then she gets to the door and she's like, "Hi, everyone. I have an American accent." I'm like, "What? They said you were Chinese."
Oh,
so they're other.
That's not my problem.
No,
This is my problem because they're othering her, like she's Chinese.
Yeah.
And then she's Chinese American, which is like
Canadian
or Chinese Canadian.
Yeah,
In this case, so it's just like you othered her. Because it wasn't
It's
like
just unnecessary.
Unnecessary. It wasn't integral to the character. It wasn't like she's from China or she's like a homestay student or anything like that.
It's a pretty common criticism of the comic book and the movie is that it's very white, even though the author is half Asian or Asian.
Oh.
And Knives in particular is a big criticism.
Oh, well, then he has permission.
She falls into all the tropes of the Chinese schoolgirl, and they don't do anything to differentiate her. And I think like Ellen Wong more than makes up for it with her performance. I think she's charismatic as fuck in this role.
Yeah.
And it's like I love Knives by the end of this.
She's a great character.
She's my favorite character this whole movie.
Yeah.
But
Lauren thought it was kind of bothered by the fact that like Anna Kendrick's character, Stacy, Scott's sister, calls him out or says specifically like, "Oh, you're dating a Chinese schoolgirl, really? With the uniform and everything?" And like that's cringy. And I was like, okay, that didn't bother me as much because she's almost like making fun of him
for the trope.
For like being a part of this trope where like white guys fetishize Chinese schoolgirls or whatever. And so I'm like, okay, I get that, but I can also see how it's like you are literally putting a Chinese schoolgirl character into this story and then calling attention to the fact that she's Chinese. It's kind of weird.
In the comic book, she doesn't even fight her own fight. It's her dad that comes to fight.
Yeah,
because Scott upset her.
Big oof. Oh, and then later she shows up at the fight, and Gideon is like, "Listen, Kung Pao chicken."
Whoa.
I'm like, "Whoa,
but
okay."
It's good because you're supposed to hate Gideon, and so like it helps define that.
It makes sort of sense, but at the same time, I'm like, "Oh."
I like when she arrives and she's like, you think you're not really sure what her motivation is, but she's like there to beat up Ramona. She's like, "You stole Scott," and
she's
it's
a
like
badass.
Yeah, I was like, this is good growth.
So what was your problem with her being called out as a Chinese girlfriend? That was different than my reason. Did you ever say that?
Oh, I think it's pretty much the same.
Oh, okay.
No,
Well, you said no when I started describing my reasons. You were like, "No, this is different than mine."
I don't remember this.
Okay, well, whatever.
Anyways, my another hit pick. One at the beginning when they're all poor, all their amps say lame brand, and then when they're successful, it says sweet brand.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, they're amps?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Such a random thing.
Man, you really have to pay attention to the lower thirds in this movie.
Yeah.
Because some of them say, I wrote down you got to pay attention to the lower thirds, but I don't remember exactly what made me say that. But like there are things in there that are kind of like, oh, when they show up at the first gig at the place where they have the first gig, it's like it says the name of the place and then it's like this place is a total dump or whatever.
Oh,
it says something about it in the lower third, and that's fun.
Man, we would be so amiss if we didn't talk about the transitions in this movie. They're fucking phenomenal.
How have we not talked
Yeah, I don't know how we got this far without talking about the
style. And
I guess that's part of it. But I think there's so many good ones. Like I love all the continuing the conversations just in a new place, but with a matching shot, or like they'll like cut the lights and then turn it back on in a new place.
So is Edgar Wright the editor?
No, there's an editor, but I'm sure
Does he work with the same person every time or something?
I'm not 100% sure.
He's got to like storyboard things like super.
His brother is a storyboard artist,
right?
And so I'm sure that's part of that.
It's got to be, yeah. I mean, when you're the director, you're kind of like overseeing all of this stuff.
Yeah, I know, but it's like the editing is so integral to his movies that it's like he must be the principal editor.
I think that they must have a meeting and they talk about the style, and so like the editor goes in knowing what the deal is. It's not like he's going to start cutting it to according to his style and then Edgar Wright has to come in and correct it. It's like I think they all kind of have this cohesive vision going in, hopefully.
I bet he has
it's the same editor.
He's got people he works
with.
Yeah,
he's worked with the same editor since
for sure
ever.
Man. So like
space.
There's kind of like two transition, like there's all these like really artful transitions. Like there's one scene where they're in Scott's apartment and then you start, he's on the phone with Stacy, and it's a split screen. Stacy's on the left side.
Oh yeah.
And as the camera kind of moves away to the right, Stacy looks the direction that the camera's moving, and it keeps moving the chair wipes the frame, and then we're at the school. And
Oh yeah.
before the chair wipes the frame, we see like the letters BRs come in from the right side of the frame, and then we come down and we realize the BRRRs are coming from the school bell, and it's all one motion.
Yeah.
And the scene that we transition to is continuing the same dolly that was started in the previous scene.
So good.
And so like there's stuff like that, which is just like, that's just art. That's just like film technique.
Yeah.
Craft.
Yeah.
Very good.
And that's
Yeah.
great. But then there's also these transitions that tell us something about Scott's character, where he kind of wakes up, like he's in the middle of a conversation, and the next line in the conversation, the camera cuts to the other character that he's talking to, but they're already in the next scene. And it's implied that Scott didn't really understand how they got there.
Yeah. Huh. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, totally.
I love that, because he's sort of in this like state where he's just like in his own head, and he's like depressed and doesn't really know what's going on. And I think that's I relate to that, because I remember being in high school and just kind of being like, I'm in class, and then class is over, and then like I kind of like am in my own head, and then like I start paying attention again, and like I'm in a car or whatever.
Yep.
So
I wonder if that dovetails. Well, this is a reach, but you know how he said he gains understanding, but he doesn't in this movie. But that would make sense.
well, he started. Yeah,
He
sort
does.
of.
They don't say it, but I think he's
They
still
call
against,
it self-respect.
He's not even understanding anything that's going on around him.
Yeah. He's just like moving through life as a instinctual sort of animal instead of embracing
Purposeful
the
being.
higher purpose.
He hasn't passed the 𝘔𝘩𝘓𝘏𝑗abbar.
Yeah, he needs to get to the frontal cortex.
One of my hit picks is that password scene the first time where he's like, what's the password? He's like, whatever.
Oh yeah.
What's the second password? Ugh. That was awesome.
Like, that's the password.
That was so awesome.
And then next time he comes in, he doesn't even bother. Like, even though the passwords he knows the passwords.
Doesn't he just kill them?
He
or
kills
something?
them.
Yeah.
He straight up
Yeah.
kills them.
One of my hit picks is the amount of video game like Easter eggs they put in there. Like obviously all the Legend of Zelda stuff, all the music, all the beats, all the sound effects. I think it's super fun.
And they're so quiet.
Yeah. I
I
think one of my favorite scenes is when he like goes into the bathroom and he comes out and it's like the hallway and it's like the like whatever melody of Legend of Zelda.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I love that so much.
Did you see Edgar Wright tweet about that?
No.
So apparently, yeah, I saw, the only reason I know this is because like he tweeted, somebody liked it or whatever on my feed. So he walks into the bathroom and it's not a cut. It's all one shot.
Oh yeah.
And it's because they made an elevator that goes between these two sets. So he walks in on the one.
So cool.
He closes the door, he pees, and then when he opens, while he's in the bathroom, the elevator goes down, and then he goes out and it's on the school
So
hallway
cool.
set.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
It's all one shot.
Yeah, apparently they worked really hard to have as few CG effects as possible.
Yeah.
And I think the CG, a lot of it hasn't aged well. Like the stuff that's like more showy is fine, but like the snow melting, I think the desert looks really bad.
Oh,
But
yeah?
it's a dream state, so
Yeah, it's
that's
fine.
It doesn't bother me.
The smoke cloud that comes up in the desert bothered me though.
Right.
But
I gotta pee on her.
yeah,
That was funny.
that was a funny joke.
SL-ick. That's great too.
SL-ick.
They're like, someone says these girls. I don't even remember what it was. But some girls like slick. SL-ick.
Yeah.
Something like that. I just thought that's great.
Hit pick. We're just doing hit picks.
Hit
Yeah,
picks.
hit pick.
Lucas Lee on the front and back of a newspaper.
Yeah.
They like introduce him like he's like this actor, and then they turn it over, and then he looks evil. It's like, oh, he's the ex-boyfriend. Like, that was just awesome.
Yeah.
Their first date when they're like walking around the playground and stuff. And I don't know, there's just a bunch of cuts that just like fade between different little vignettes during the date. And the fades always happen after after Scott makes like a really lame joke.
Yeah.
I forget exactly what the jokes are, but I remember laughing because it's just these little skits. It's just like a little like SNL skit, and then we move to the next one.
This is the date?
Yeah.
Did I say that?
See that? Yeah.
No.
Bread makes you fat.
Yeah, that's a great joke.
Great line.
I don't know if this is a hit pick. They're walking down the street, and in the background on a snowy telephone wire, you can see this little squirrel walking across the wire.
Whoa.
And I'm like, they didn't
Why?
plant that squirrel. It's just a lucky take.
Huh.
But they probably noticed it and used this take.
Yeah.
So I like it.
Yeah, that's fun. I like it.
I'm in love, and it's like gas that comes out, and he waves it away. Such a good moment.
Yeah.
That's something where it's style, but it's not completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like the pee bar thing, where he's peeing, and there's
Yeah.
shows it's kind of cool because it's like out of focus in the background. It's like, oh,
Looks
okay,
fine,
that's
yeah.
cool. But like, why do we need that? We don't need that. It's just like a little thing to for fun. But the love thing is like, okay, this illustrates that she is like trying to like glom onto him, and it's just like it's represented by this vapor, and he's just like,
no. Yeah. That's that whole scene where he's like planning to break up with her. I have a hard time watching.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And do you guys know that every voice in this movie is Bill Hader?
What? I saw him in the credits. Like
Bill Hader's
he's credited as the voice.
Yeah, the narrator. He's like the guy in the game.
Like Scott gained the power of love.
Yeah, that's all Bill Hader. Or like long time ago in a mysterious land of Canada or Toronto.
Bill Hader is crazy.
Oh,
he can do so many things with his voice.
He's so humble. And his face.
I love him. And his face. Yeah. I love him. That's cool because like some of the announcers are like this deep gravelly guy. And then there's like, Scott gained the power of love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I just love this movie so much.
It's a good movie.
Well, that's it, eh?
I think that's it.
You still think it's a 6? Because that's kind of crazy.
Nah, it's not crazy.
That's pretty crazy.
Nah.
It's a really good movie, James.
Yeah, but
that's the lowest you've given of any Edgar Wright movies.
That doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. I think that's why it doesn't make sense to me, because you've given like Hot Fuzz and like the other ones, like you've given them like 7 something.
I might have just been tired.
All right.
I might have just
You
been
started
tired.
it late Sunday.
Yeah, you watched it at 6 a.m.
Well, my kid goes to bed so late, man.
Yeah.
And I refuse to start the movie when the baby's awake because I'm like, I'm not going to be in it. And then if she goes to bed at like 10:20 or something, I'm like,
10:20?
I'm going to be up till like freaking midnight.
Oh, dang.
So then in this case,
you got to knock that kid out.
I fell asleep and I woke up at like 6 the next morning, my normal wake up time, and finished it. And maybe that's why I like the next half of it more. I don't know.
Yeah, you're.
That's
fair. That's fair.
Dang, dude.
All right.
Well,
but we did it.
Next week, we're going to do this other movie that I hope is good.
Yeah.
The Mitchells versus the Machines.
Versus the Machines.
It's not a great title. Hard to remember.
MVM.
MVM.
Did we already talk about how we
Marvel
haven't done
versus
Spider-Verse
Marvel.
yet?
Just never got around to it.
No, it's that it didn't come out the right time. We'll cover it, I'm sure, in the lead up to Spider-Verse 2.
Right.
We want to cover it. Guys, you don't have to tell us to cover it. We will cover it.
It's not
alert.
like Boondock Saints where we're like, don't really want to
Fuck
do it.
Boondock Saints.
Wait, what?
It's such a...
Is that that show?
We'll talk. It's a movie. You're thinking of the
Boondocks.
Boondocks.
I'm thinking about the Boondocks.
I like the Boondocks.
Yeah, Boondock
All
Saints
right.
is whatever.
Hit us up on Twitter at Carpool Critics. Hit us up via old school boomer email. hello@carpoolcritics.ca.
Hello.
Goodbye.
I had a poster for Boondock Saints.
Oh, you're that cool?
See you later.
I'm going to make so-and-so mad that I don't...